All right, Raheem, happy New Year's Eve to you. You are in the future. You, as always, you are in England, I'm in the United States. So you will actually experience 2026 before while I'm still in 2025. But today's topic, because I wanted to wrap this up before the year is over, is about the Cambridge word of the year from the Cambridge Dictionary. And that word is, and I'm going to use my wife's glasses here to illustrate the point as I read the official definition of the Cambridge Word of the Year is parasocial. That's right, people, parasocial. And what parasocial is a term that describes a one-sided connection that individuals feel with famous people or public figures they do not personally know. The rise of such relationships has become increasingly relevant in today's digital age, reflecting changes in how people engage with celebrities in media. Okay? So, and I will be
Hold on.
bringing these back.
Shout out to the Deontay Wilder glasses. I appreciate your fashion sense and your nod to the former champion.
No doubt about it. And thanks again to my wife for said glasses. I was hoping to look smart like you always look smart, but anyway.
You, Sean, have the much heavier lift of being smart. I just have to look smart. That's the dynamic of this show.
Thank you. I don't agree, but so we deal a lot in our comments, in our happenings here, actually getting to cover and engage with said celebrities and athletes with their parasocial relationship fans and others. And I'm very interested to hear what you say about it. I will start this segment with a story I had back in college, back graduating at UNLV here in Vegas. And because I was a jackass or straight out of high school, I was a lot older than a lot of my classmates at UNLV. They were doing it the right way. They were straight out of college, 18, 19, 20 years old. And there I was in some of my classes at 27, 28 years old. So anyways, Raheem, one of these classes we had was the First Amendment class, really learning everything about that goes into the First Amendment, freedom of speech, what you can do, what you can't do, arguments about it, controversies about it, all that. And randomly, kind of one of the students brought up the topic of what they said was stan culture, right? And what stan culture is basically kind of what I'm talking about, this parasocial relationship stuff. And they wanted a discussion about whether it was positive or negative. And a lot of them seemed to be in favor of it. And I believe the young lady was a K-pop fan, right? And I guess K-pop has a strong stan culture. And I'm hearing everyone talk about it and for the most part take a positive stance about it. And I go, being the old head I was in that class, I go, do you guys know where the term stan comes from? Actually, I may have been even 29 or 30 at this point. And I said, do you guys know where the term stan comes from? And they all were like, no, they didn't actually know the origin of stan. And I go, Stan is a song by Eminem in 2000. I know you guys know Eminem. I go, well, and they go, okay. And I go, well, here's what happens in the song. Eminem, this guy Stan, who's obsessed with Eminem, writes to him over and over again, and then eventually, at a fit of rage, when he can't really communicate with Eminem, he ties his wife up in a car and drives off a cliff with her pregnant and murders both her, the baby inside, and himself out of a fit of rage of this kind of Stan relationship. And I kind of bummed them all out. And they're like, oh, that's where Stan culture comes from. And so ultimately, I think it's an unhealthy thing to develop these parasocial relationships, this Stan culture. And I see a lot of it in our videos, Raheem, when we talk. Anytime we speak about people's favorite fighters, there's this thing. And I think before they had these terms like Stan culture or parasocial relationship, I call it the Ari Gold effect, right? And I call it the Ari Gold effect in that when you watched Entourage, you were on Ari's side. You identified with Ari, right? But in real life, you held much more in common with those interns and those employees that he was verbally and psychologically destroying every episode and treating terrible. Now, the show was so good and Jeremy Piven was so good in that role that you loved Ari Gold. But in real life, if you were one of those people, you would think he was a horrible person. He was a maniacal tyrant of a kind of guy, right? but you identify with Ari. And I think similar when media, and I gotta bring out the glasses again for this. Media's original definition is a plural form of medium, meaning media is the medium between the subject, in this case, we're talking about celebrities, professional athletes, and the public, which is the people watching us at home, right? And what I would say is when LeBron James or a popular coach like Bill Belichick used to, or Greg Popovich, or when your favorite musicians take a dog shit on the media, remember that in a way they're kind of taking a dog shit on you because, and of course we're not perfect. I think we get plenty of criticism that we deserve and all that. That's a popular thing to do. The president, fake news, like it's a very en vogue thing for several decades now to point the finger negatively at the media. It is what it is. A lot of time it's a fair charge. But what I'm saying is you hold much more in common economic status wise, social status wise, with that media getting dogged than you do the professional athlete. You are not Ari Gold. You are much more similar to the person Ari Gold is ripping a new asshole into. Go ahead with some opening thoughts, Raheem.
Let me work backwards. You are much more similar to the people that the interns are vetting to get into the office to meet the secretary of Ari Gold, who might possibly decide you have enough talent to get a meeting with Ari Gold where he can potentially treat you like shit. Being in the office is aspirational for you.
Mm-hmm.
That is how low on the rung you actually are. And that
Many
is how low on the rung
us.
you are often seen by your so-called heroes. Yes, this criticism of the media that you talk about, I think really is even above our pay grade. You're talking about institutional media. We're not that. We're grassroots media. We may be able to now function in a space that confuses that because the internet has gotten so big and we are able to I'm able to present on network occasionally. You are able to report for a major NFL team, but at the same time, still, you're essentially an independent journalist that's holding fastly onto that definition and distinction. That's a different way to come at this. So, I, when the parasocial relationship worked in my favor very early on when there weren't nearly as many media around, and I'm the guy holding the fighters to task and accountable and asking the tough questions and wasn't being strangled by the institution of boxing now that has really created its own really promotional wing of media that really masquerades as journalism but is just mini promoters. And the promoters and the networks now more than ever by a long stretch dictate to the so-called media what you're allowed to say and ask and your access and all the things that we know are now the current challenges of the profession. Back then, I had a parasocial network of fans and followers that would watch my content. And when I got banned from shows or denied access to fighters, they would come to my aid. They would demand that Radio Raheem gets in. They would tear people apart who clearly were trying to what would be now the term cancel me, but that wasn't the term then. They were just trying to ban you or stop you or you know what I mean. That worked in my favor. And I utilized it and depended on it to get back in the game when the powers that be try to take me out of the game. The relationship now between fan, I believe, and idol has become exactly what you say, in that they see themselves now as the power that be. They don't anymore associate with holding accountable the power structure at all. They want to be the power structure because then it allows them to stomp on anybody who's down. And that is what the culture is right now. Kicking people when they're down, shitting on people, roasting people, trolling people, humiliating people, not at all anything about the substance of the person or trying to lift them up. And one of the, like, we will do a thing about or a year in review. That's not this, but one of the best moments for the fans for me this year was when they held you up with your Dana White moment. I was impressed. I was invigorated. I was inspired by the fan reaction to your stance against power. That really was like a throwback for the fan reaction. And it wasn't universal, but it was enough to be like, hey, they're still out there. There's now, to be fair, maybe that's because it's Dana White and he's not
Right.
the boxing guy, and they had a common villain, and so yeah, it seemed like in this case they were ready to roast him or troll him or shit on him or take him down a peg. But it was still nice to see the little guy, or I should say the independent guy, speaking truth to power, and the fan and such getting his back. And I'll just say this at the end with the Stan thing, the fact that the students didn't know the origin of Stan, but now have used it as a word that they've roped into the lexicon to define something that they understand as a part of their very reality and the way they associate with society and pop culture, yet don't know the origin of it, yet the song is literally about that. It's that term not only has come full circle by it being now in the lexicon, but what it's actually about is a guy who feels this connection with the celebrity he doesn't know, who has no real control over his life, and spins out, crashes out, literally in the song, or figuratively, as we say, because he can't fortify this connection that is completely imaginary in his mind. And it ends up being the death of him, his girl, and his baby to come. These kids are using this definitive term to talk about a psychological experience that they're having and they're identifying. Don't bother to understand the origin of it. Yet, in a sense, they're stands themselves. They're taking something Eminem did, defining themselves by it, not really understanding it, which means they have no true connection to it, yet are bummed out when you tell them what the reality is.
Mhm.
That's standing too.
Yeah, well, I think what's interesting about it all now, once upon a time, it was criticized, especially if you were an adult man like us, to vicariously live your thrills and your glories and your triumphs through your favorite football team, through your favorite fighter, through whoever, like whoever came up in music. And now it's not the sad part, it's gotten worse. People aren't even vicariously living the triumphs and the glory through their favorite athletes. They're vicariously living through getting hated on. Like they want to feel like I'm getting hate. Like they want to vicariously when Terrence Crawford the other day goes, I can see the hate and the jealousy in your eyes. And he tells Aiden Ross, part of why I'm retiring is I'll never get the credit. And it's like, that's just not reality. Me and Raheem just spent a 70-minute video talking about how you're one of the all-time greats. Max Kellerman, who's considered more influential than any of us in boxing media, called you the GOAT in the ring in front of 70,000 people, right? Like right after you won. But the fans, they take that from their favorite athlete. They want to feel hated on. And what I think is funny is a lot of the time they're the haters. They're the ones. Ask your favorite fighter or favorite athlete to say something nice about a media person that has criticized them or said something about them or their craft that they disagree with, that they take umbrage with, right? And I bet you they won't. Because when's the last time any media, any athlete or any fighter had something positive to say about a media that wasn't just dick riding them? And even then, it's never enough, right? But so I would, and then to the people who would, oh, you're a Canelo hater, or you're a Usyk hater, you're a Inoue hater, you're a Crawford hater. It's like, what are you? Are you trying to surmise that you're some kind of lover coming in someone? You're a peacemaker. You're a lover coming in the comments, calling someone a hater. And nowadays, they don't. They all claim that you're a hater because they want more credit for their guy, right? But they
Mm.
don't want you to give credit because when you do give credit for 80-20 of a video or an entire video, they're nowhere to be found. It's they're looking for the hate. So, and I think 90% of the time, the term hater, and I thought this when it was popularized in the early 2010s, 90% of the time, it's just something to kill critical thought. It's just a term meant to kill critical thought, which criticism, they kind of go hand in hand a lot of times. Now, not always. I think sometimes the word, I've used it before to describe someone. Like there is such a thing as just being a fucking hater, right? But I think a lot of the time it's interesting that they're claiming you're a hater when it's like you're the hater. You're the one who's distilling an entire nuanced discussion or argument into just hate. That's actually hateful of you. And again, if the athletes they don't embrace the love, they're fueled by the hate, which I think is a point I'm going to flesh out deeper in our discussion.
Negativity is an energy source. Like
Yes.
we say, there's a thin line between love and hate, but what's
Yeah.
being rewarded right now is hate. And it's a salient point that you make. They want to identify with being hated on, and they also want to be in the position of power of being the hater. But either side of that coin is still negativity that you're feeding on. It's one of the things that I think has changed in the hero worship relationship, right? There's a victim mentality fed into that. Like, yes, if you're a victim of hate, well, then that means you're important enough to hate. And I want to be the guy that's getting hated on. There was also this whole trend of like, yeah, hate on me, hate on this, hate on this, my car, hate on my girl, hate on my clothes. Hey, this that's a signal that all of my shit is so great that it's worth hating on, and you're so whack that that's all you can do is hate on it because you can't replicate it. That's where you're getting your, it's a weird spin on negativity. Like, I understand trying to take a negative and turn it into a positive, but that's not turning that negative into a positive. That's really turning the negative back on the other person, which isn't the same thing. Now you're just really perpetuating it and spinning it to where it's just I'm rubber, you're glue, right? The hate bounces off me and sticks to you. No, there was a time when turning that hate actually into positivity, turning that actually into something that you can feed on, and then inspire those who hated on you instead of using it now to try to double the negative energy and stomp them out with it. That's why I take umbrage, not just take exception to, but umbrage at the Andrew Tate reaction to having been lost because he is masking that inferiority, as he would describe a guy who lost. He's masking that weakness, that punk, that defeat as, oh, now, yeah, now I'm spitting that into positivity for me when you are so ardent at spinning it all into negativity on anybody you saw in that same position before it was you. That is what is disingenuous about it, why I don't believe it, and why it just smacks as disingenuous. And then you want that grace. That's actually the right attitude, as I said the first time we talked about this, but not from that guy. You know what I mean? This is what we've gotten so far away from, actually inspiring each other, trying to recognize the positive in a negative situation. Yes, rewarding each other for effort, leaving it all in the ring, all of that kind of jargon has some real root in keeping society as a whole progressing forward and helping each other level up. The, that's really one of the fundamental lessons about boxing. Getting up off the canvas, making it through the 12th round, knowing you're losing, but not just running and deciding that you're going to survive, but fighting to the final bell. Uh, all these cliches and terms that we use to no end, they used to actually mean something. It, that is, I believe, not just lost in the culture, but we're starting to even lose that in the sport. And for us, that's a real tragedy, man.
Yeah. Okay. So exactly to your point, right? Muhammad Ali dealt with more hate than any of the fighters deal with now, right? And to take it fictionalized, Rocky and Rocky Four, when he's fighting in Russia, and they all want him to lose to Ivan Drago, right? What did Ali do? He made believers out of people that hated him. He didn't. Ali didn't grab the mic after he knocked out Foreman or beat Joe Frazier and go like, now what, haters? You know, like he probably said in so many words that kind of sentiment amidst all the things he said, but it wasn't the main message. It was he made people that once hated him and disagreed with him and made them love him. He turned that hate into love and progressed society to a better place. Rocky, to use a fictional example, he takes, a lot of yous hated me and I didn't like yous either. He's like, but if I can change and you can change, everyone can change. And they took all that hate, they overcame it, and rather than continuing to spread it out into the ether, they turned it into something positive and love it. And that's what's missing in boxing, in sports, in our culture, and in our society. And we can't get to these deeper truths if these parasocial fans who I'm going to keep it on. If these dick sucking fans won't let us do the job and tell the good, the bad, the beautiful, and the ugly. And what a lot of them want, and I have to bring the glasses back out now for our other big word of the day, is hagiography or hagiography. And this is actually on brand because I'm getting this word from one of my critics on Twitter, Fred Garvin. I'll give him a shout out. Fred Garvin's not his real name. He doesn't show his real name. He's a provocative, interesting troll, right? But has some salient points, and then other times where you're like, he's a troll, good and bad. And he's been critical of me plenty of times. But when he used hagiography, I said, that's a good word, and I looked it up. So what the definition of that is the writing of the lives of saints. Or auditory writing about another person, or a biography that idealizes its subject, Raheem, right? And I believe beyond the vicarious wanting to be hated on, that's what a lot of the audience wants, is they don't want to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly and the beautiful about, which is interesting because I couldn't get enough of it. I remember when I got a book from my English teacher about, it was the final season, Phil Jackson writing about Kobe, Shaq, and the juiciest stuff, because it was so new to me, being a kid growing up on modern media, ESPN, and all this stuff, was all the juicy details and all the controversies and all the ugly moments Phil Jackson was honest about many times lazy Shaquille O'Neal, and a lot of times a narcissistic, sociopathic Kobe Bryant. And it was like, oh, this is like, now I feel like I'm watching a good R-rated movie and not some crappy PG movie, PG-13 blockbuster thing. Now I feel like I'm watching Goodfellas. Now I feel like I'm watching Now I feel like I'm being talked to like an adult. And I would tell the audience, isn't that what you want? It's okay. You are infatuated. I'm still infatuated as we talk about this with my favorite athletes and everything. I love the John Elway documentary that just came out. And that's still a documentary, more so idealizing John Elway, but it gives you enough of the ugly for it to be provocative adult media, right? And it's like this. Speaking of Kobe Bryant, right? Kobe Bryant, rest in peace. I have 3 of his jerseys. Okay, I watched him routinely on FS West, and he was like, watching art on the basketball court. He was incredible. I know you watched him too, but at the same time, one quote Kobe Bryant said was, one of my greatest strengths, or if not my greatest strength, is that I'm an asshole, right? So if I get on here and say Kobe Bryant was an asshole, perhaps even sociopathically so at times, all of his parasocial relationship fans, all the stans would want to burn me at the stake, would they not? And it's like, but he said it. It's the truth. It doesn't take away from, he was a great father. He was an amazing artist on the bat. And I'm not even going to say an amazing ball player. He was an artist on the basketball court, transcendent beyond his craft of basketball. He was a transcendent figure in the United States to watch and grow up around. But also kind of a sociopathic asshole who also put out there that Mamba mentality. And to digress about that for a minute, when I went to the Hall of Excellence earlier this year, opened up by Jim Gray and Tom Brady, this is the deeper point I'm getting about why we got to tell the whole truth and nothing but it, was I was in there and I was seeing some of my favorite memorabilia. Damn, there's Steve Young's Super Bowl jersey. I love Steve Young. I love the Niners. There's the first Super Bowl I ever watched from my grandpa. This one's for John Elway. against Favre and the Packers, and they got the football that was the MVP football. They got Tom Brady's 7 rings. They got Joe Lewis's original boots. They got everything, right? But what I'm thinking is, if all of this is so excellent, then why are we $40 trillion in debt? Why is the United States have so many issues? And I'm not saying it's their fault, but what I'm saying is, if we got Mamba mentality and we got Tom Brady's 7 rings, then why does it feel like this is Rome beginning to collapse? Which speaks to the point I said earlier about the Jake Paul Joshua video yesterday. Late stage Rome used professional sports as a bread and circuses as the empire was beginning to collapse. And I think more and more, as athletes have taken up a greater piece of the economic pie and the influence with the youth and everyone abroad. Remember, once upon a time, Joe Montana was making 100 grand a year winning the Super Bowl for the Niners. That means you're looking at a man who was much more a part of us than he was, I guess, them, is a way to put it. They are not us anymore. They not like us. They not like us, Raheem. They are in so many facets. And that doesn't mean you still can't look up to their perseverance, their craft. They are winners. I get it. But if they're such winners, then and they're such winners for us to idolize and false idol worship, then why is the country at the whole becoming a loser on the that's part of the deeper stuff I want to get at.
The fictional explanation or the fictional example that you used in Rocky, and then the real life example that you used in Muhammad Ali, the rallying factor in both cases was the underdog. The guy in Ali, who, yeah, now is the most popular athlete to have ever performed in any sport or competed, but at the time was the Louisville Lip, right? A lot of people couldn't stand Muhammad Ali, was hoping Sonny Liston would knock him out, was counting on George Foreman to shut him up. Like, this was not the hero of the entire sport, full stop, by any stretch of the imagination. But as you said, especially with the times, the racial relationship between fellow citizens, the war going on, all these things, religion, and all this stuff, that was negativity thrown his way, and that in some sense he was spitting fire back, right back in their faces. The audacity, the counter to the powers that be not being willing to be a good Negro, like he would describe Joe Louis as being, and yes, taking down his fellow fighters and calling them Uncle Toms at times, whether warranted or not. Yeah, I believe though that he evolved into something that was more mature and fed society ultimately back something that was positive. And we kind of took that journey with him. We saw what he had to go through to hold his principles to bear, to, as we would say now, 10 toes down. And he, lost his boxing license and went through all of the trials and tribulations of a guy who's public enemy number one, and then rose back to hero status and was able to win that Foreman fight when most people thought he was going to go in there and get destroyed. And so those examples is what was tethering the fans also to that journey, because you'd been knocked down. People had been hating on you. Maybe it was your religion that people thought was devil worship or cult, or was the ire of the community, or maybe it was your race, or maybe it was some professional thing that people thought you couldn't achieve. And so you would hold on to these things from these idols that were seeming to do the impossible, but coming from where you came from, which is why it was so important that he was Louisville, which is why it's so important where these where the 49ers play, because that represents the city. That is where an athlete is originally from, his hometown, which is what we were talking about, with Joshua. When the UK press came down on him, you want your hometown to have your back, even if they keep it real. Also, get my back a little bit. You talk about, we want to see the whole truth. You want to show the whole picture. Yeah, I don't know if that's ever really been the case. What's happened was, though, that the athlete themselves would show you the human side, or you would see them go through it and they couldn't hide it. And those were the moments that you held on to because that is what you really related to when they showed you that human side, even though they were doing extraordinary, seemingly extra human things. That's what we related to, and that's what we aspired to. Not that they were perfect, but that they were human and seeming to do things that were beyond what humans should be able to accomplish, yet still had the failings and had enough humility and understanding of their relationship with the fans that they had to show that. And the guys who tried to pretend to be perfect 24/7, the guys who really hid it all and pretended like they were above everyone else, those guys didn't really end up being the ones who sustained through time as long-standing heroes. They kind of are shooting stars, and then a scandal comes, and you've got no humanity. You've not shown your human side. You've been a dick to the fans. You're not able to be related to, and then they enjoy tearing you down. That's usually what happens to that guy, or used to be what happens to that guy. Now it's like the tearing down from a lot of times we in the media, but now from the fans themselves is the ritual. I don't know that that I even understand fully, and certainly don't believe all of this humiliation ritual and shit that people are talking about online. I know you have your space there. We'll talk about that at more length one day. I don't ascribe to all that shit and numerology and who's Satan and all this stuff, but I think people reach for all that now because nothing seems real. Everything seems to be either a scam or a full-blown play put out in front of you to deceive you about reality. You just don't know what is real, and every single day they're creating something else to distract you from reality or completely transplant what is real with something that's fake. And even if they'll tell you it's fake, you can't figure out where to find the real shit inside of anything anymore. So that's when people's imagination start running wild. You start ascribing all these mass conspiracies. And I'll just say this, remind yourself that the conspiracies that have to be executed, the way that this would all have to play out for the numerology to make sense, and the humiliation ritual and the script to be followed and all that. Think about the people actually who have to flawlessly execute this plan with so much forethought and absolute flawless structure of narrative that it all falls into place perfectly. The people that you're relying on to do that most of the time are fucking idiots. They're not capable of doing this. You are the nut job that's capable of putting it all together after the fact because you can find ways to make numbers do anything. And once the story has already played out, you can create a narrative on how it got there because it already happened. But in real time, making that shit happen and fit every fucking number and slot into every box and the word here that means this and the fucking symbol on the fingers that mean that, all of this plays out perfectly because the people who are doing it are such geniuses. I just challenge you to look at the people who are supposed to be making this shit happen and tell me that you even think that this collection of people is smart enough, much less excellently capable of flawlessly executing something that complicated together, mind you, for it to fucking all fall into place into the script you wrote after the fact.
Well, they only show us the people they want to show us, Raheem. It's not them doing it, right? And they get their power from
Bullshit.
Satan or
You
something.
only
I'm just saying.
incorporate the people. Look, Sean. Look, when you did this, the screen created like a Sean Zittel
Uh-oh.
floating
This supposed to be the
okay
triple
symbol.
six. Okay,
I
that's what
mean,
they would
oh my
say.
God. Oh, here we go. I hope the audience can't see that because that really did
I know,
just
right? I
kind of
didn't
like
even mean to do that. I was
ironically
just
make your
contemplating
point.
putting the glasses on to respond to that for a minute. No,
Oh, that's how the okay symbol
that's all
came.
that
That
was.
was
All right,
kind of
that's my
crazy.
cover. Yeah, this is actually auditions for the Illuminati on the low. But no, but
Oh,
okay. But to take it back,
yeah, I went on a
well,
tangent there. My bad.
you're good. You're good. I do it all the time. To take it back, I guess what it is this false idol worship stuff. I think Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson, two of the all-time idols, put it best, man. Mike Tyson said, people say you're great, you were great, you were great, and he goes, I don't give a fuck about being great anymore. I just want to be good. I just want to be a good person. Okay, and he's like, he said, I think he even said, "Fuck great," right? But that's what everybody's obsessing over is the great ones, the goats, the greatest of all times, all and. We can't forget just the good, decent people that get no shine every day in our real lives as we chase this greatness and worship this greatness. And Muhammad Ali said beautifully, famously, he said, my number one goal is going to heaven when I die. He's like, I don't, he goes, when I go to heaven, I don't think God's going to say, well, you beat Joe Frazier. You beat George Foreman. He's going to want to know, was I a good person? And then he said something about two teaspoons of kindness, a little bit of happiness, a little bit of humor, a pinch of this, and that's what I hope people remember Muhammad Ali for, right? And I think that speaks to this whole point of this discussion. Um, and just to flesh it out and help this all wrap up. Um, I I saw this is what I mean by people never identify with the media going on. I saw Keyshawn Davis, who I'm looking forward to his fight with Jermaine Ortiz on the Tiafimo Shakur card. This just speaks to my point. He was getting interviewed, and one of the reporters was doing. I know what the reporter was doing. He was actually giving Keyshawn a softball. He goes, "What do you think about the mentality of the fighter and mentally this and that heading into the fight?" And he's like, "Well, y'all don't care for real about the mental of a fighter, so I don't know why you're even asking that." And just kind of and what I would ask Keyshawn if he was watching was, do you care about the mental of the young man or the man that you undressed in front of his peers and kind of shitted on in front of his colleagues? Do you care about the mental of Raheem? Do you care about the mental of any of these people that many of them I remember Shakur saying, y'all are the most trifling ass media there is out there. And I thought, no, Shakur, this is some of the most dedicated media out there. This is not The Athletic, ESPN, Sports Illustrated. These are a bunch of independent media who may not actually make back the money they're spending this weekend to come to Las Vegas through their hotel, through their airfare, through whatever to cover this sport. All those big shots, they're not here because they don't find any value in this sport anymore, which is relegated to niche status in the United States. And that's all I would say is, and so many of the viewers would identify with Keyshawn and Shakur right there. Yeah, they're right. The hating ass, media. And it's like, again, Keyshawn, do you care about that young man that you just undressed in front of his colleagues, who was trying to give you a softball, who wasn't really pressing you? He could have said, "Yeah, how are you feeling after blowing weight by an entire weight class?" And or when like in that same day he was going back and forth with Richardson Hitch. And again, I'm a big fan of Keyshawn, not fan. I believe in Keyshawn Davis's talent. I think greener pastures are ahead of him despite some hiccups this year after becoming a world champion in 2025. But when he's saying to Richardson Hitchens, we got to fight in Norfolk because, that's where the money's at. That's where I sell tickets. And it's like, yeah, the last time you had a fight in Norfolk, we didn't even get to the fight night. So, someone could have thrown that at you in the middle of going back and forth with Richardson Hitchens in New York. But what I'll say is, to kind of close everything, here's my thing. I don't know if a Howard Cosell, we're talking about Ali so much, Cosell had that great back and forth with Ali. It wasn't just, how you doing, champ? How you feeling? It was, well, Muhammad, I don't think you could beat Joe Frazier. Yeah, I don't think you're all that. I don't think you could beat George Foreman. And did Ali go, you're a fucking hater, Howard. No more interviews for you. Is that what he said? No, he said, okay, all right, Howard Cosell, I'll show you. I'll show you what it is. And then eventually he did. And then after affording that human decency and respect to a man who was just trying to do his job, just like Muhammad was trying to do his job, Muhammad, you are the greatest. And that's more how it should be instead of what we got now. And I'll conclude with this. George Orwell, this quote well. Everybody who's serious about what they do in media knows this quote. And that quote is, journalism is printing something someone else doesn't want printed. Everything else is public relations. I'll close on that. And so if you're looking for the hagiography, don't come here anymore. Go somewhere else.
If everybody likes you, you're probably not doing your job that well. That's another journalism adage. It's the cusp of 2026. I'm sitting here, I can hear the fireworks outside the window, and we're sitting here at work. Your family is waiting on you to join them for the last day of the year, but we found it important to get together and do this thing that we have on offer to the public because we have a passion for what we do. But the audience is what allows us to get it done. And yes, sometimes the negativity that drives their passion for the comment section, which still registers as engagement and still registers as a view, keeps us afloat. And sadly, we need the negativity sometimes as much as the positivity to have the audience big enough as a collective to keep going. But in this new year, let's just find a way to put a new face and a new spin and a new energy on it. Like, I can appreciate that people get pissed and have to have their say. Sometimes the comment section is saying something that the broadcaster or influencer or content creator doesn't want to hear, but needs to be told. I appreciate that. We can do our job better. Certainly I can. I intend to strive to do it better, but the audience is now more a part of it than they ever were. They've got a bigger voice. They've got way more way to insert themselves into a narrative. So use that responsibly. You're a little journalist now, like you say, well, all right, you're at least public relations, if not a journalist, because the way you respond, the way you react, what you demand, what you roast, and what you host and hold up has a huge effect on what happens and what is deemed important. So now use your responsibility for your voice with a little bit more regard. It's not just saying with the first thing that comes to your mind or roasting a guy when you think he's down or having a clever comment to try to make a guy feel like shit in the moment, like you're talking about Keyshawn with this journalist. Maybe since you think we do such a shit job or I have such a terrible this or that or Sean should needs to stop this or start that, do something with your own voice while engaging us that is on the one hand maybe critical but not shitty. And you can be constructive without being destructive. You can actually be a voice, and we do read the comments. We're not sitting here saying, we don't give a fuck what people think. That is also nonsense from anybody who's in the public eye, because you wouldn't be in the public eye if you didn't give a fuck what people thought. So we admit we read the comments, and it is important to me what you think. And sometimes I read shit and I'm like, yeah, maybe I need to take that on board. Sean is it's so important to him that he gets his picks right, that he's thought through his perspective and gives his take clearly and broods over that stuff sometimes. So it's because the importance that the audience has to him. That's you. You're the people that are keeping him up at night, that are making me like rethink how I do things, that are holding me to account and making me get on this computer at fucking New Year's Eve as the rockets and bombs and the parties are going off. This is actually what I want to be doing. This is my party. This is how I want to enter the year. You want to enter the year the way you want to live the year. I want to be working this year, and I want to have a voice this year and be bringing something that elevates the sport and grows me as a journalist and a man this year. So that's how I'm rigging this year in. You now, with your voice as an audience, as a fan, have the exact same responsibility. So get a taste of it and use it wisely. With great power, which the audience certainly has now, comes great responsibility.
Yeah, Snap in the 90s said, I've got the power. Now you've got the power.
You got the juice now.
Yeah,